The dust-caked hem of Katherine Vance's dress dragged through the parched earth as she stumbled forward, her arms aching from the weight of 6-month-old Emma. Through cracked lips, Katherine whispered promises to her daughter, promises of safety, of a home, of a future, promises she wasn't sure she could keep. But giving up wasn't an option, not with 43 miles behind her and only 7 more to go before reaching Unionville, Colorado. It had been 1875 when Katherine's world collapsed. 3 days ago, she'd fled the burning remains of her homestead, the image of her husband's bullet-riddled body seared into her memory. Thomas hadn't been perfect, but he'd been hers, and the cattle rustlers who'd taken him had taken everything else too except Emma. They hadn't found Katherine hiding in the root cellar with the baby pressed to her chest, her hand clamped over Emma's mouth to muffle her cries. When the sound of hoofbeats had faded into the distance, Katherine had emerged to find nothing but ash, blood, and the vast, unforgiving frontier stretching before her. The nearest town was Unionville, 50 miles away. Just a little farther, sweet girl, Katherine murmured, adjusting Emma in her arms. The baby's weight had become both burden and blessing. Each step forward was agony, yet the warm bundle against her chest was the only thing keeping Katherine from collapsing into the dust and surrendering to grief. The midday sun beat down mercilessly as Katherine crested a small rise. Her parched throat constricted at the sight before her, a creek, its water glittering like diamonds in the harsh light. She quickened her pace, ignoring the protest of her blistered feet. Falling to her knees at the creek's edge, Katherine dipped a handkerchief into the water and pressed it to Emma's lips. The baby stirred, her eyes fluttering open to reveal irises the same deep brown as her father's. Katherine swallowed a sob as she scooped water into her own mouth, the cool liquid bringing momentary relief. She had just settled against a nearby cottonwood to nurse Emma when the sound of approaching hoofbeats sent terror coursing through her veins. Clutching the baby to her chest, Katherine scrambled to her feet, frantically searching for somewhere to hide. "Madam, you all right there?" The voice came from across the creek. A tall figure on horseback regarded her with concern. Katherine took an instinctive step backward, her arms tightening around Emma. "No need for fear," the man said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "Isaac Keller's my name. I run cattle about 10 miles west of here." Katherine remained silent, eyes darting around for escape routes. The man Isaac dismounted with fluid grace, keeping his distance as he removed his hat. His hair was the color of sun-bleached wheat, his eyes a startling blue against his tanned skin. Despite the pistol at his hip, something in his steady gaze eased Katherine's panic slightly. "Your little one seems tired," Isaac observed, nodding toward Emma. "And begging your pardon, madam, but you look about ready to drop. Where you headed?" "Unionville," Katherine replied, her voice raspy from disuse and thirst. Isaac's eyebrows rose. "Unionville? That's still a fair piece away. You walked from?" "Our homestead, near Cottonwood Springs." Katherine's voice threatened to break. "There was trouble. Rustlers." Understanding darkened Isaac's features. "That's nigh on 50 miles, madam." Katherine nodded, too exhausted for further explanation. Isaac studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "My ranch is closer than town. Got a spare room, food, clean water. No strings attached. You can rest up, then I'll take you to Unionville myself when you're ready." Katherine hesitated. Thomas had always warned her about the dangers of trusting strangers in this wild country. But Emma was growing feverish, and Katherine's own strength was failing. Death lurked in the wilderness for a lone woman and child. "Why would you help us?" she asked, caution edging her words. A small smile touched Isaac's lips. "Because you walked 50 miles carrying your baby, madam. Reckon you're strong enough for 2. But even the strongest need rest sometimes." Something in his straightforward answer resonated with Katherine. She looked down at Emma, then back at the cowboy with his patient eyes and outstretched hand. "Thank you," she whispered, and took a step forward. Isaac's ranch was modest but well-maintained. A single-story cabin with a stone chimney stood beside a small barn and corral. As they approached, Katherine noticed the careful attention to detail: the swept yard, the neatly stacked firewood, the garden plot bursting with vegetables. "It ain't much," Isaac said as he helped Katherine dismount, "but it's mine, free and clear." Inside, the The cabin was surprisingly tidy for a bachelor's dwelling. A cast-iron stove dominated one wall. A table and chairs occupied the center, and a rocking chair sat near the hearth. 2 doors led off the main room. "Spare rooms through there," Isaac indicated. "Has a proper bed. My quarters are opposite. There's a washstand with fresh water, and I'll heat some for a proper bath if you'd like." Katherine felt tears threatening. The simple offer of basic comforts overwhelmed her after days of desperate survival. "I don't know how to thank you," she managed. "No need," Isaac replied, busying himself with stoking the stove. Anyone would do the same. But Katherine knew that wasn't true. The frontier bred hard men who looked after their own interests first. Isaac Keller was an exception. That night, after a simple but filling meal of bean stew and cornbread, Katherine sat in the rocking chair, Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms. The baby's fever had broken after Katherine bathed her with cool water. Now, clean and fed, both mother and daughter were experiencing their first moments of security in days. Isaac sat at the table, whittling a small piece of wood with practiced hands. He'd been respectfully quiet, asking no questions beyond what Katherine volunteered. "They came at dawn," she said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Thomas, my husband, he tried to stop them from taking our cattle. We didn't have much, just 10 head, but it was our start." Isaac's hands stilled, but he didn't interrupt. "I heard the shots from the house. When I saw them riding toward our cabin, I hid with Emma in the root cellar." Katherine's voice trembled. "They took everything worth taking, then burned what was left. Rustlers have been getting bolder," Isaac said quietly. "The laws spread thin out here. Thomas always said we'd make Cottonwood Springs our home. Build something lasting." Katherine looked down at Emma. "Now I don't know what's ahead for us." Isaac set aside his carving. "My mother found herself alone with a child once me. She used to say the only way forward is through. One step at a time." "Is she?" Katherine began. "Past 5 years ago. Influenza." Isaac's expression softened with memory. "She was the strongest person I ever knew. Raised me by herself after my father died in the war. Taught me everything worth knowing." Katherine nodded, understanding the unspoken connection between them, both shaped by loss, by the harsh realities of frontier life. "You should rest," Isaac said gently. "Morning comes early out here." As Katherine settled into the clean, soft bed that night, Emma nestled beside her. She allowed herself to feel something beyond grief and fear for the first time in days, gratitude, and perhaps a fragile hope. Dawn brought the sounds of life on a working ranch. Katherine woke to Emma's hungry cries and the distant lowing of cattle. After nursing the baby and changing her into clean cloths fashioned from one of Isaac's old shirts, Katherine ventured outside. Isaac was in the corral, working with a spirited young horse. Katherine paused to watch his patient, firm handling of the animal. There was no cruelty in his methods, only calm insistence that built trust between man and beast. "Morning," he called when he spotted her. "Sleep well." "Better than I have in days," Katherine admitted. "Is there something I can do to help? I'm not one to take charity without earning my keep." Isaac smiled as he exited the corral. "No charity here, just neighborliness. But if you're of a mind to help, I wouldn't say no to someone tending the garden. Been neglecting it with spring roundup." Katherine nodded, grateful for purposeful work. With Emma settled on a blanket in the shade, Katherine lost herself in the familiar rhythm of gardening, pulling weeds, watering tender shoots, taking comfort in nurturing living things. By midday, she'd harvested enough vegetables for a hearty stew. As she worked in the kitchen, Katherine realized how natural it felt to be in this space, as if her hands remembered motions her mind had forgotten during her ordeal. "Something smells mighty fine," Isaac said, stepping into the cabin with a freshly killed rabbit. "Thought this might add to the pot." Katherine accepted the offering with a small smile. "I hope you don't mind my taking over your kitchen." "Mind? I've been eating my own cooking for 5 years. Trust me when I say yours is a blessed improvement." His easy laugh warmed the room. As they worked side by side, Isaac skinning and cleaning the rabbit, while Katherine chopped vegetables, a comfortable rhythm developed between them. There was no need for constant conversation. Their shared tasks created a language of their own. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant orange and purple hues, Katherine found herself studying Isaac's profile. His features were strong, a straight nose, firm jaw softened by 3 days' growth of beard, clear eyes that missed nothing. "When will we leave for Unionville?" she asked, wondering why the prospect no longer held the urgency it once did. Isaac glanced at her. "Whenever you're ready." Though I was thinking, he paused, choosing his words carefully. "Winter's not far off. Might be sensible to wait until spring to make any permanent decisions. You're offering us shelter through winter." Catherine's surprise was evident. "The cabin's plenty big. You'd have your privacy." Isaac looked slightly uncomfortable. "I just figure a woman and child shouldn't be facing frontier winters alone if they don't have to." Catherine considered his offer. Unionville represented safety, but also uncertainty. Here, at least, she knew what to expect. Emma was thriving with regular meals and peaceful sleep, and Isaac had proven himself honorable and kind. "I'll consider it," she said finally. "Thank you." Isaac nodded, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. "No rush to decide. Take all the time you need." Days stretched into weeks, and Catherine found herself falling into the rhythms of ranch life. Each morning, she rose with the sun to tend to Emma and prepare breakfast. While Isaac worked with the cattle and horses, Catherine managed the household tasks, finding satisfaction in creating order and comfort. In the evenings, they'd sit by the fire, Isaac often reading aloud from one of his small collection of books. His deep voice gave life to the words as Emma dozed and Catherine mended clothes or worked on the quilt she was piecing together from fabric scraps. It was during one such evening, as August gave way to September, that Catherine realized how much her heart had healed in this place. The raw wound of Thomas's death would always be part of her, but it no longer defined her every moment. "You're quiet tonight," Isaac observed, setting aside his book. Catherine looked up from her sewing. "Just thinking about how quickly things can change. 2 months ago, I didn't know if Emma and I would survive." Now, Isaac prompted when she fell silent. "Now I can imagine a future again," she admitted softly. Something flickered in Isaac's eyes, hope, perhaps, or understanding. "That's good to hear." Catherine hesitated before asking the question that had been on her mind. "Why did you stop that day? By the creek? You could have ridden past." Isaac was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames in the hearth. "My mother," he said finally. "After my father died at Gettysburg, she walked 20 miles with me on her hip to reach my father's family in Missouri. They turned her away, didn't approve of the marriage to begin with." His jaw tightened at the memory. "She kept walking until she found work at a boarding house. Saved every penny until we could head west for a fresh start." He looked directly at Catherine then. "When I saw you by that creek, holding your baby like she was all that mattered in the world, I saw my mother. Couldn't ride past any more than I could stop breathing." Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. She raised a good man. Isaac's smile was tinged with both pride and humility. Tried to live up to her example, that's all. The first snowfall came in late October, earlier than usual. Catherine stood at the window, watching fat flakes drift from a pewter sky. Emma, now crawling with determined energy, pulled herself up on Catherine's skirts, babbling happily. "Snow means quiet days ahead," Isaac said, coming to stand beside them. "Good time for indoor projects." Catherine nodded, suddenly aware of his proximity, of the clean scent of soap and leather that always surrounded him. "I've been thinking about your offer. To stay through winter." Isaac waited, his expression carefully neutral. "We'd like to stay," Catherine said, looking up to meet his eyes. "If the offer still stands." The smile that spread across Isaac's face brought warmth to the room despite the gathering storm outside. "It stands." "Glad to hear it." That night, as the wind howled around the cabin's sturdy walls, Catherine lay awake listening to Emma's soft breathing. The decision to stay felt right, yet it also frightened her. She was beginning to care for Isaac in ways that went beyond gratitude. His quiet strength, his gentle patience with Emma, his respect for Catherine's boundaries all had worked their way into her heart. But was it disloyal to Thomas to feel this way? Was it too soon? And did Isaac feel anything beyond kindness toward her? These questions swirled in her mind as sleep finally claimed her, the snow continuing to fall, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. Winter settled over the land like a heavy blanket, transforming the landscape into a world of white and blue shadows. The short days developed a pattern: mornings spent caring for the livestock, afternoons occupied with indoor tasks, evenings filled with conversation and companionable silence. Isaac taught Katherine to play checkers, laughing at her fiercely competitive spirit. She, in turn, showed him how to make proper biscuits, their hands occasionally brushing as she guided his movements with the rolling pin. Emma grew stronger each day, her personality blossoming. She would squeal with delight when Isaac entered the room, reaching for him with pudgy hands. The first time she called him Ike, his eyes had grown suspiciously bright before he'd swung her high into the air, making her giggle uncontrollably. Christmas approached, bringing with it memories both sweet and painful for Katherine. She found herself remembering last year's simple celebration with Thomas, wondering how to honor his memory while creating new traditions. One afternoon, while Emma napped, Katherine sorted through her meager possessions. From the bottom of her traveling bag, she pulled out the small wooden box that contained her most precious items, her parents' wedding bands, a lock of Emma's hair, and the silver pocket watch that had belonged to Thomas. She was running her fingers over the watch's engraved surface when Isaac entered, his boots silent on the wooden floor. "Sorry," he said, turning to leave. "Didn't mean to intrude." "It's all right," Katherine replied. "I was just—" She held up the watch. Isaac nodded in understanding. "Christmas makes us remember, doesn't it?" "Yes." Katherine returned the watch to its box. Thomas loved Christmas. Said it was the one day when even the most hardened soul remembered to be kind. "Sounds like a man worth knowing," Isaac said quietly. Katherine looked up, surprised by his words. Many men would be jealous or dismissive of a predecessor's memory, but Isaac's sincerity was genuine. He was, she agreed, not perfect, stubborn as a mule, and terrible with money, but he loved Emma and me with his whole heart. Isaac settled into the chair across from her. "Tell me about him. If you wanna, that is." And so Katherine did, sharing stories of Thomas's dreams for their homestead, his silly jokes, the way he'd sing Emma to sleep with off-key lullabies. As she spoke, she realized something remarkable. The memories brought sadness, yes, but also joy. Thomas would always be part of her, but remembering him no longer felt like drowning. When she finally fell silent, Isaac reached across the table to briefly touch her hand. "Thank you for sharing him with me." That simple acknowledgement that Thomas had been real, had been loved, had mattered was the greatest gift Isaac could have given her. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. Katherine woke to Emma's excited babbling and the smell of coffee brewing. Wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, she carried Emma to the main room where Isaac stood by the stove. "Merry Christmas," he greeted them, his smile wide beneath his neatly trimmed beard. Katherine's eyes widened at the sight before her. A small pine tree stood in the corner, decorated with paper stars and strips of red fabric. Beneath it lay several packages wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "When did you?" she began. "Been planning it for weeks," Isaac admitted. "Cut the tree yesterday while you were baking. Decorated it after you went to sleep." Emma squirmed in Katherine's arms, reaching toward the colorful sight. Katherine set her down, watching as the baby crawled eagerly toward the tree. "I didn't prepare anything for you," Katherine said, feeling suddenly overwhelmed. "You've given me plenty," Isaac replied, his voice low. "This house hasn't felt like a home since my mother passed. Until now." The significance of his words wasn't lost on Katherine. Before she could respond, Isaac was kneeling beside Emma, helping her open a small package that contained a carved wooden horse. "Made it myself," he explained as Emma examined the toy with solemn concentration. "Thought she might like something of her own." "It's beautiful," Katherine murmured, kneeling beside them. "Thank you." Isaac handed her a package next. "This one's yours." Katherine unwrapped it carefully to reveal a leather-bound journal and a fountain pen. "Oh, Isaac. Thought you might want to write things down for Emma. About her pa, about your journey. Things she should know when she's older." The thoughtfulness of the gift brought tears to Katherine's eyes. "This means more than I can say." Isaac's cheeks reddened slightly. "There's one more thing. Not much, but—" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in a handkerchief. Katherine unwrapped it to find a silver locket on a delicate chain. The craftsmanship was simple but beautiful. "Open it," Isaac encouraged. Inside was a tiny lock of Emma's hair on one side, and on the other, a minuscule sketch of the cabin. "How did you?" Katherine breathed, amazed by the detail. "Had it made last time I was in Unionville. Fellow there does fine work. Isaac rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly shy. Thought you should have something to remember. No matter what happens. The implication in his words that their time together might someday and sent an unexpected pang through Catherine's heart. It's perfect, she said, reaching up to fasten it around her neck. I'll treasure it always. Later, after a Christmas feast of roast rabbit and all the trimmings, Catherine and Isaac sat before the fire, watching Emma play with her new wooden horse. The contentment Catherine felt seemed almost dangerous in its completeness. I've been thinking, Isaac said, breaking the comfortable silence. When spring comes and the pass is clear, we should ride to Unionville together. Get your situation proper with the authorities there. Report what happened at your homestead. Catherine nodded, trying to ignore the heaviness in her chest at the thought of leaving this sanctuary. That would be wise. And after that, Isaac hesitated, his fingers tapping an irregular rhythm on the arm of his chair. Well, that would be for you to decide. What comes next for you and Emma? Catherine studied his profile, noting the tension in his jaw. What would you want to happen? Isaac turned to face her fully, his blue eyes intense in the firelight. I'd want you to stay, both of you, not out of gratitude or necessity, but because you choose to. Catherine's heart quickened. Are you asking? I'm not rushing you, Isaac clarified quickly. I know your heart's still healing. But yes, Catherine, I'm asking if you might consider making this arrangement permanent. In time. The directness of his statement was so typically Isaac honest, without pretense or manipulation. Catherine found herself responding in kind. I care for you, she admitted. More than I expected to care for anyone again. But I'm afraid. Of what? Of losing again. Of depending on someone only to have them taken away. Catherine's voice wavered. I'm not sure I'm strong enough to survive that twice. Isaac reached out slowly and took her hand in his. The day I found you, you'd walked nearly 50 miles carrying your baby. You're stronger than anyone I've ever known, Katherine Vance. Strong enough for two. Strong enough for anything life throws at you. His certainty washed over her like a cleansing rain. Give me time, she whispered. Not a no, just time. Isaac brought her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Time is something we have plenty of out here. The winter months deepened, bringing blizzards that confined them to the cabin for days at a time. Far from feeling trapped, Catherine treasured these quiet days of domestic intimacy. Emma taking her first tentative steps across the wooden floor, Isaac teaching Catherine to play the harmonica he'd kept tucked away for years, evenings spent reading aloud by lamplight. By February, Catherine had begun to notice subtle changes in their interactions. Isaac's hand would linger when passing her a cup of coffee. Their eyes would meet across the room, holding for heartbeats longer than necessary. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. One evening, as a particularly fierce storm raged outside, Catherine sat at the table writing in her journal. Emma had been asleep for hours, and Isaac was carving by the fire, his skilled hands transforming a block of pine into the shape of a bird. What are you writing? He asked, looking up from his work. Catherine smiled. I'm describing this winter for Emma. How peaceful it's been, despite the storms. How safe we've felt. Isaac set aside his carving. And do you? Feel safe? Yes, Catherine answered without hesitation. Safer than I've felt since before. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Isaac rose and moved to sit across from her at the table. Catherine, there's something I need to say. The seriousness in his tone made her set down her pen. What is it? I've been thinking about spring, about going to Unionville. His hands rested on the table, strong and capable. Before we go, I want to be clear about my intentions. Catherine's breath caught in her throat. Go on. I love you, Isaac said simply. I think I started falling the moment I saw you by that creek, stubborn and scared, but still standing. I love the way you sing to Emma when you think no one's listening. I love how you always save the last biscuit for me even when I tell you not to. I love your strength and your kindness. The words washed over Catherine like summer rain. She reached across the table and placed her hands over his. I'm not trying to replace what you had with Thomas, Isaac continued. That's yours to keep. I'm offering something new, something different, but just as real. Catherine felt tears gathering. I've been afraid to admit it, even to myself. But Isaac, I love you too. You gave us shelter when we needed it most, but more than that, you gave me space to heal, to find myself again. The smile that broke across Isaac's face was like sunrise after the longest night. Slowly, he stood and moved around the table, drawing Katherine to her feet. His hands cradled her face with infinite gentleness. "May I?" he whispered. Katherine's answer was to rise on tiptoe and press her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened into something that felt like coming home. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I never thought I'd find this again," Katherine murmured against his chest as his arms encircled her. "Nor I," Isaac admitted. "After my mother died, I figured it was just me and this land until the end of my days." Katherine looked up at him. "And now I see a future with a family in it. If you'll have me." "Yes," Katherine said, the single word containing all her hope for tomorrow. Spring came early that year, the snow melting to reveal tender green shoots pushing through the softening earth. With the changing season came practical considerations about their future. "We should marry before we go to Unionville," Isaac suggested one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Make everything proper and legal." Katherine nodded, Emma dozing against her shoulder. "The nearest preacher? Reverend Mills comes through Unionville first Sunday of each month. We could ride in, get married, handle our business with the sheriff, and be back home before dark." Home. The word settled in Katherine's heart like a warm stone. This place had become home not because of the sturdy walls or comfortable furnishings, but because of the love that had grown within it. "First Sunday is only 10 days away," she noted. Isaac took her free hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Too soon? We can wait if you need more time." Katherine shook her head. "Not too soon. Just right." The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Katherine wore her best dress, carefully mended and pressed for the occasion. Around her neck hung Isaac's Christmas gift, the silver locket catching the morning light. Emma, now nearly a year old, was dressed in a new gown Katherine had sewn from flower sacking bleached white and trimmed with bits of lace Isaac had purchased on his last supply run. "Ready?" Isaac asked, appearing in the doorway of their room. He wore a clean black suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his frame. Katherine's heart swelled at the sight of him. "Ready." The ride to Unionville took just over an hour. Emma secured in front of Katherine on the gentle mare Isaac had trained specifically for Katherine's use. As they crested the final hill, Katherine got her first glimpse of the town, a single main street lined with wooden buildings, a church steeple rising at one end. "Not much to look at," Isaac admitted, "but it serves the ranchers and miners in these parts well enough." They tied their horses at the hitching post outside the white clapboard church. Reverend Mills, a stout man with kind eyes and a booming voice, welcomed them warmly. "Brother Keller, been wondering when you'd bring your family to meet me." His eyes twinkled as he looked at Katherine and Emma. "Actually, Reverend, we've come to be married," Isaac explained. "If you're willing." The minister's smile broadened. "More than willing, son. Let's step inside and do this proper." The ceremony was brief but meaningful, the morning light streaming through the simple stained glass windows as Isaac and Katherine exchanged vows. Emma, perched on the Reverend's wife's lap, watched with solemn attention as her mother and the man who had become her father pledged their lives to one another. "By the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Mills declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Isaac's kiss was gentle but filled with promise. When they separated, Katherine saw in his eyes all the tomorrows stretching before them. After the ceremony, they made their way to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Taylor was a grizzled veteran of the frontier who listened with growing concern as Katherine recounted the attack on her homestead and Thomas's murder. "Been hearing rumors of a new gang working these parts," the sheriff said when she'd finished. "Sounds like the same bunch. I'll wire the territorial marshal, see if we can put together a posse. Will they be brought to justice?" Katherine asked, not entirely sure she wanted to know the answer. Sheriff Taylor's weathered face grew somber. "Can't promise that, madam. Laws spread mighty thin out here, but we'll do what we can. Meanwhile, you've got yourself a good man in Keller here. Known him since he was knee-high to a grasshopper." Isaac shook the sheriff's hand. "Appreciate that, Jim. We'll be heading back to the ranch now. First day as a proper family." As they mounted their horses for the journey home, Katherine felt a sense of completion. The circle that had been broken with Thomas's death had reformed into something new, different, but no less precious. "Happy, Mrs. Keller?" Isaac asked as they rode side by side, Emma now sleeping in her father's protective embrace. Katherine looked at the man beside her, at the child they would raise together, at the future they would build. More than I ever thought possible again. The seasons turned, each bringing its own joys and challenges to the Keller ranch. Summer saw the addition of 20 new cattle to their herd, a wedding gift from neighboring ranchers who had heard Katherine's story and been moved by it. Autumn brought news from Sheriff Taylor the gang responsible for Thomas's death had been caught and hanged after a failed bank robbery in Denver. Katherine received the news with quiet solemnity, grateful for closure, but finding that vengeance brought less comfort than she'd imagined. The love she'd built with Isaac and the life they shared with Emma had become her focus now. On Emma's first birthday, Isaac presented his daughter with a special gift, the deed to the ranch, with her name added alongside his and Katherine's. "This will be hers someday," he explained as they stood on the porch watching Emma toddle after a butterfly in the yard. "I want her to know she's always had a place in this world, even when she was too young to remember it." Katherine leaned against her husband's solid warmth. "You're a good father, Isaac Keller." "Learning as I go," he replied with a smile. "Same as you." The following spring brought news that filled the ranch with anticipation. Katherine was expecting a child. The baby would arrive in late autumn, just before the winter snows. A brother or sister for Emma? Isaac marveled, his hand gentle on Katherine's still flat stomach. "Our family grows." As Katherine's pregnancy progressed, Emma, now a chattering 2-year-old with her mother's dark curls and her adopted father's blue eyes, became fascinated with the changes in Katherine's body. "Baby in there?" she would ask, patting Katherine's rounded belly with careful hands. "Yes, little one," Katherine would answer. "Your brother or sister is growing strong." Life on the ranch continued its steady rhythm, cattle to tend, crops to harvest, preparations for the coming child to make. Isaac built a cradle from pine harvested on their land, and Katherine sewed tiny garments in the evenings as they sat by the fire. In late October, as the aspens turned golden and the first hint of winter chilled the air, Katherine went into labor. The midwife from Unionville had been staying with them for a week in anticipation of this moment. Isaac paced outside their bedroom door, Emma clutched in his arms as they waited through the long hours of Katherine's labor. "Mama okay?" Emma asked, her small face pinched with worry. "Mama is the strongest woman I know," Isaac assured her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "She's bringing your new brother or sister into the world." Finally, as dawn broke over the eastern hills, a new cry joined the household, strong and indignant. The midwife opened the door, her tired face wreathed in smiles. "A boy," she announced, "healthy as can be." Isaac carried Emma into the bedroom where Katherine lay propped against pillows, a small bundle cradled in her arms. Her face, though weary, glowed with joy. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Isaac settled on the edge of the bed, Emma in his lap. Together they gazed down at the new arrival, red-faced and perfect, with a shock of dark hair like his mother's. "Hello, Thomas," Isaac said, using the name they had agreed upon months before. "Welcome to the world, son." Katherine looked up at her husband, tears of gratitude shining in her eyes. "He would be honored, Isaac." "It's a good name," Isaac replied simply. "A strong name for a boy who comes from strong stock." He looked from the newborn to Emma to Katherine. This family was forged in strength. Emma reached out a cautious finger to touch her brother's tiny hand. "Baby brother," she said with satisfaction. As the first snowflakes of winter began to fall outside their window, the Keller family huddled close in the warmth of their home. Katherine thought back to that desperate day when she had fled her burning homestead. Emma clutched to her chest, how certain she had been that happiness was forever beyond her reach. Yet here she was, surrounded by love, her heart full to bursting. The journey had been long and painful, but it had led her here, to this moment, to this family. "I love you," Isaac whispered, as if reading her thoughts. "All of you." Katherine looked up at the man who had found her at her lowest point and seen not weakness but strength, not defeat but resilience. "And we love you. Always." In the years that followed, the Keller ranch prospered. A daughter, Sarah, joined the family 2 years after Thomas's birth, completing their circle. Emma grew into a capable young woman with her mother's determination and her birth father's warm brown eyes. Young Thomas inherited Isaac's way with horses and Catherine's quiet thoughtfulness. Sarah, the youngest, combined her father's practical nature with her mother's compassionate heart. Unionville grew from a small outpost to a thriving town, and the Kellers became respected members of the community. Isaac served on the town council, while Catherine helped establish the area's first proper school. On quiet evenings, Catherine would sometimes take out her journal, the one Isaac had given her that first Christmas, and read to their children about their family's beginnings. She told them of Thomas Vance, the brave man who had been Emma's first father. She recounted her desperate journey across 50 miles of wilderness with an infant in her arms. And always, she would tell them about the kind cowboy who had stopped by a creek one hot summer day and seen a woman in need, a cowboy who had recognized her strength even when she herself had forgotten it existed. "You're strong enough for two," Isaac would say, repeating the words that had changed both their lives. Strong enough for all of us. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Catherine with a special gift, a silver frame containing a pencil sketch of their family, all 5 of them standing before the ranch house that had sheltered their love through all seasons. From that day by the creek to now, Isaac said as they sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues. "Did you ever imagine this life?" Catherine leaned against his shoulder, her hand finding his as naturally as breathing. "Not in my wildest dreams. But I wouldn't change a step of the journey, not even the hardest parts. They all led me here, to you, to our family." Isaac's arm tightened around her. "To think it all began because you were strong enough to keep walking when anyone else would have given up. And because you were kind enough to stop," Catherine added. "We saved each other, I think." As darkness settled over their land and stars began to speckle the vast Colorado sky, Katherine Keller counted her blessings: the ranch that had become a true home, the children who carried their legacy forward, and most of all, the man beside her who had seen her strength when all she could feel was weakness. Their story of loss and finding, of strength and redemption, of a desperate journey that led to an unexpected destination would be told in their family for generations to come. A testament to the enduring power of love to heal, to rebuild, to create something beautiful from the ashes of what was lost. And it had all begun with those simple, powerful words spoken beside a creek on a scorching summer day. "You're strong enough for two."